We're here today with Pete Landau, Executive Director of Range Resources, a dual-listed AIM and ASX oil and gas exploration company with assets in Puntland, Somalia, former Soviet Republic, Georgia, Texas and Trinidad. Now, hi Pete, could you just give us an overview of your portfolio?
Thanks, Sandra. I mean, Range has got probably four key assets. We've got some production assets in Texas with 2 wells currently on stream, and Texas you'll get probably about 1 well every 3 months to a total of about 24 wells obviously over the next 6 to 7 years.
So you've got good cash flow?
Cash flow coming from those 2 wells. I think the key is independently assessed value just on the Texas assets alone of over 200 million US. We have what many people would call a high-risk, high-reward play in Puntland, Somalia, which is multi-billion barrel targets, but obviously it's not the easiest environment to work on. But
we had some holdback. There's been some help.
There has been some delays, but we are confident that a well will be drilled around mid-year 2011, which will be the first well drilled in the region for over 20 years. And you know, the size of that well is around a 1 billion barrel in place target. So obviously exciting times. And then Georgia, which is probably the closest to a lot of investors' hearts right now. We recently completed the seismic interpretation. We've identified 6 targets with the top 3 having about 500 million barrels in place with an aim of, we're doing a helium survey, which I can talk about later on those targets, with the aim of commencing drilling in February. Next year.
So if we just look at Georgia, can you just tell us what the rationale is behind your investment?
Yeah, I mean, rationale, as with any investment decision, is value proposition. I mean, obviously, Range, we definitely think we do like going into a high-risk, high-reward type scenario. I mean, the rationale with Georgia was always the acreage had never had any modern exploration techniques put on it since the Soviets in the late 80s, early 90s. There definitely is oil there with oil seeps and some moderate exploration previously undertaken. So we did the seismic survey last year. Earlier this year, results have come back and look already independently assessed 2 billion barrels in place in our acreage. So the rationale is now to literally drill as many holes as possible and hopefully have a discovery sooner rather than later.
And so what sort of targets are you going for first?
Our top 3 targets each will be around the 150 million barrel in place. Recoverability is estimated anywhere between 30 to 40%. Traditionally, Georgia's at 38%. So look, it's obviously the good thing about Georgia also is that they're not ultra deep, these targets, and proximity to infrastructure, both rail, port, roads, electricity, is very, very close. I mean, Georgia has significant oil and gas pipeline infrastructure running through it. So in terms of the ease of drilling, we don't anticipate any problems at all.
So how did Range Resources first get involved with
Georgia? I mean, it was obviously post-GFC, we assessed that we didn't want to be a single project company, especially when that project's in Puntland. So obviously a few people had approached us with various opportunities, and again, post-GFC we thought Georgia was probably one of the better ones to go. One, because of the potential size of the target. 2, it did come with some people who wanted to back the play financially. And 3, our infrastructure locally in terms of local relationship with the government is all good. And I mean, and our view is if you are going to do something, whichever country you're in, you need to have very good local relationships.
So timeline for Georgia?
Timeline is we're on the ground next week with a helium survey, where basically what you do with the helium survey is you basically give the coordinates of your top 3 drilling locations. And then they do basically a soil sample and a 1.5 metre subsoil sample in a 10 square kilometre grid around those drilling locations. So that'll take about 20 days, and then another 3 to 4 weeks, another 3 weeks to process it. Has been successfully used throughout Russia by all the major Russian E&P companies. So we hope to have those results out towards the second half of January, which will then verify the seismic locations and provide good oil in place targets. I mean, the ultimate aim of the helium survey is to ensure that with our first 2 wells that we have the best possible chance of getting a discovery. And so after that, the aim is we have the rig tender, the drilling contractors, the tenders ready to go. So the aim will then be to mobilise and drill in February, and that'll be a back-to-back 2 well program.
Okay, so Texas, if we go to Texas, you've had a lot of success with that. That's been good for your company, cash flow, production. Could you update us on the activities of the North Chapman Ranch in Texas?
Sure. So Texas, we've got two wells on production right now. The Smith and the Russell Beverley. The Smith, despite being fracked, is only producing from I think 1 or 2 of the zones. So when the frack teams is available, that will reopen up all zones. The Beverley is flowing naturally at this point in time. So the aim is on those two to frack Beverley first in the new year, then Smith, and that will shoot up production to about I think 8 to 10 MCF a day gas, and about, what are we looking at, 5,000, about 1,000, between 1,000 and 1,500 barrels of liquids just on those 2 wells. And then the Albrecht, which is the next well, drilling probably January or February. So the play with Texas and North Chapman is basically well will be drilled every 3 months and just continue to accumulate. And each of those wells profiles are about 4 MCF and anywhere from 500 to 1,000 barrels a day. So that's just the the next 6 years of Chapman is to get all. Ultimately, it's a 22 well program and should be well, it's Texas is self-funding at this point in time, but then ultimately, obviously, we hope it'll contribute to other activities down the track.
Okay, so you earlier this year you announced investment in the East Texas Cotton Valley.
Yep.
Can you give us an update on activities?
No, timing for that is to definitely commence drilling. The horizontal well should start second week of December. And look, we're very confident. We should, for a very small amount of money, aim to increase our interest from 13 to 21%. Which we hope to be able to announce in the next week. So we'll have 21% of East Clarksville, and not huge, but look, for a $500,000 investment, the cash flow, oil, no gas, it'll definitely 3 month payback, and again, from a cash flow perspective, it doesn't hurt.
So starting with this size company, it's best to do deals and own percentages.
Oh, I mean, look, as I said before, as long as there's a value proposition, you assess each of them on its merits. But I think Range, with Texas, because we've got the steady cash flow there, which is obviously going to increase over the coming years, and then the big upside plays in Georgia and Puntland, Somalia, and then we've got Trinidad as well from a cash flow perspective. Yeah,
so tell us a bit more about Trinidad and what the attraction was there.
Trinidad was one. I mean, ideally, we would have liked to have taken the whole of Trinidad into Range. Unfortunately, with Puntland being delayed to take a, call it $100 million asset when Range was only capped at 80 million, it was probably too big at the time, whereas if we were capped at around 300-400 million, we definitely would have done it. I mean, we really do like the Trinidad play. I mean, it's basically it's an undeveloped production play. Only 5% of the production reserve acreage has actually been online, so it will go from 700 to probably 4,000 barrels a day in the next 3 years, and that's without drilling what's called the Herrera formation, where there are at least 10 Herrera anomalies on the properties, and each of those can have anywhere from 10 to 60 million barrels. So look, we really do like Trinidad. We've got the 10% interest. Look, that transaction should be completed either towards the end of this year or very early next year. And again, it's currently doing 700 barrels a day. But the exciting thing about Trinidad not only is the production increase, but drilling those Herrera formations. So again, lots of news flow with Trinidad starting in the new year.
Yeah. So you talk about a lot of big plays. Puntland is a big play, and there have been some delays.
Look, I mean, Puntland's probably the emotional attachment that we all have to Range. I mean, that was the original asset that we all came in on, and I think it's fair to say the one thing is we are determined to make sure we get the first well drilled. Definitely had some stop-starts with Africa Oil as operator, I mean, which you're probably always going to get in that region. But, given that we have had a change of government and the PSAs have been renewed with the new government, we are, third time lucky, we are confident that the process will get the first well drilled should spud June, July next year. And as I said, the key features of Puntland is it's just the sheer size of it. I mean, Conoco were there in the mid-80s. But between the two basins, independently assessed, anywhere up to 20 billion barrels in place. So it is very big tiger country. But and as I said, first well's a billion barrel in place target. So look, for Range, our ultimate aim is just to keep the news flow up as much as possible. So key things on Puntland in the next 3 months will hopefully be the extension of the PSA with the government, signing of the rig contract, and then mobilisation hopefully in around March, April by Africa Oil to commence drilling.
And with Georgia, you're an operator, and how's that going?
Yeah, I mean, look, Georgia, the good thing about, obviously, the Strait, which is the company we hold the asset in, is they have a very experienced team. A lot of them were involved in the Soviet exploration days in Georgia. So, I mean, we like Georgia because we are in control of our own destiny as operator. So we're very comfortable that we'll be able to move very quickly, both in completing the helium test and drilling as soon as possible. But we definitely have, look to have 2 wells drilled by sort of like finishing up by July, August next year.
Okay, so you talk about a lot of news flow. Can you just sort of summarise to the viewers really what are the strengths?
Yeah, well, I mean, news flow wise, and then we can talk value proposition. I mean, news flow wise, just even leading up to Christmas, we're going to have the East Clarksville, the Cotton Valley, that will commence drilling. We'll have, the helium survey is commencing next week, so that will be completed. We hope to have the PSA extension on Puntland done, and details of the Albrecht, which is the 3rd well to be drilled in North Chapman, and hopefully, although it could drift into early the new year, the completion of the Trinidad play. And look, Range always is a value proposition. I mean, we're capped at around 120 million US. As I said before, a lot of people consider the Texas assets alone as a valuation underpin, given that they're independently assessed at 200, but as a valuation underpin of Range, which means, that Georgia, Trinidad and Puntland are free carried. And all of them have significant potential. So we think that the value proposition of Range is always going to be there. The important thing for us is to hit our milestones and just keep the news flow coming over the next 6 months. And we think we definitely have the ability, well, with our current assets, I mean, obviously, all discoveries will make a significant difference, but having all discoveries will mean we'll move to, to that target $500 million market cap. Currently, look, we've got around circa 8 to 9, well, around 9 million in cash. So we're undecided whether we'll do a raising. I mean, we don't technically need to. If there's a number of farming partners on Georgia that have expressed an interest in farming in. So I mean, so for us, people always talk about dilution, but if we did do a raising, which we are undecided, when you're capped at 120, the most it's going to represent will probably be around 5% of the company. So no need or no plans for any big raisings. Might be a small one, but again, if we get the right farming partner in Georgia, we probably won't do a raising, and definitely don't have to do it now. Obviously, we'd like some other results out before we do one. And so, as I said, the Range value proposition we think is as good as it's ever been, and plenty to look forward to before the end of the year and moving into 2011. Okay,
I'm sure there are a lot of people looking forward to that news flow. Thanks so much, Pete, and thank you. You've been watching Range Resources.
Pleasure, thanks.